Munger Road is an independent film by inspirations of true events. And when the marketing for the film's case shows 3 stars, it's almost as if the film is telling you that the movie is going to be average at best. Maybe they just wanted to tell you that Roger Ebert was the person who told you that the film was average at best. I have no idea why they put this on the cover. Maybe just because of the Roger Ebert's name, they needed anything they could get. The film stars Bruce Davison, whom you would probably know from many films. The one that comes to the top of my head is Senator Kelly in the X-Men live-action film. And we have Randall Batinukov, and Trevor Morgan as the other names here. On the back, you can see that it's got no big names. Gaiam is the biggest icon here. Let me see what other companies. This one here has got an F. Let's say small. Frost Style, whatever. It's an indie film. It's an indie film. And when you look at the side, it's Gaiam here, whatever. And it's inspired by true events, which are, you take that with a grain of salt with these films. And anytime a movie says it's inspired by true events, it's just inspired by something that exists in a way. And in the way that this exists is that Munger Road does exist, and there is a suburban legend surrounding Munger Road. In, I believe it's the city of St. Charles, Illinois, there is a road called Munger Road, and there is train tracks on this road of Munger Road. And the legend allegedly states that a school bus full of children stalled on the train tracks of Munger Road and was run into by the train. You would think the train would try to stop, having seen the school bus on the train tracks from far back, but the school bus got hit. Everybody on the bus died, allegedly. So a group of teenagers in this film decide to check that story out, and they tell you the Munger Road legend after that is that if you take your car out to Munger Road and you stall it on the train tracks, and you have baby powder on your car's bumper, then you will feel your car being pushed across the train tracks onto the other side safely. If you were to get out of your car and check the bumper, you would find small little handprints on the bumper, indicating potentially that the ghosts of the children that died on the bus from the train pushed your car to safety. That is the legend, and that is the most interesting facet of this film. Everything else about it is not as interesting. The only thing that even remotely keeps your attention is Bruce Davison's acting. He apparently gets top billing even though he's not the main character. He does have his own subplot, because when you get Bruce Davison, you have to use him, at least in some manner, shape, or form. So he gets a subplot where he is investigating an escaped convict from a prison transport that went awry. This escaped convict is a known murderer, and it appears he's heading home. And he apparently needs to cross Munger Road to get home, which is where our characters get into a little scrap. Speaking of our characters, we have 4 teenagers, 2 couples, that decide to test out this Munger Road urban legend suburban legend, and they drive their van to the train tracks, and they stop, and they stall a car, and the two dudes in the couples, they get out of the car while the ladies are inside the car talking to each other. Whatever they're talking about, I couldn't pay attention. There's so much nothing being spoken, at least nothing in my opinion. I couldn't pay attention to it. There is a lot of dialogue in this film that I just could barely pay attention to, particularly in the first act. But what happens in the first act is the two dudes in the couple, they get out, leaving the girls in the van to talk to each other about the urban legend. They go around back, and they sprinkle baby powder on the bumper, and they push the car, and they try to hide from their girlfriends. So they don't know who touched the car or whatever, and then they call for their girlfriends to come out of the car and take a look at the bumper, and they show the little handprints, and the girlfriends are duped into thinking that the urban legend was real, but really the boyfriends were just playing a prank on them. And then they get back into the car to try to start it to go home, and they find that the car actually is stalled, that the ignition, the transmission or whatever, the ignition coil cracked or braked when they went over the railroad tracks. And at least that's what one of the characters it tries to explain using automotive lingo. So the ignition coil, from what she says, is broken, and the car will not turn over, and the engine will not start. So they're stuck, and apparently their phones don't get any signal out here on Munger Road, because of course they don't. So our characters are stuck out here. And then our little serial killer comes out and starts to pick them off one by one. But it's very drawn out. It is very drawn out and dragging. There's a lot of nothing being spoken throughout the second act. There is some mild, interesting lines and acting with Bruce Davison's character and his subplot. He's trying to investigate the disappearances of the teenagers, because they didn't tell anybody where they were going, so he's looking for them, as well as looking for the murderer that escaped from the transport or whatever, and that was the only interesting part of the second act. And throughout the third act, when the murderer actually starts picking off the teenagers one by one, I already mentally checked out. I couldn't care at all. I couldn't tell you how any of them died. I couldn't even tell you who the killer was, what he looked like, whatever. I couldn't pay attention. And that's not a rip into this film or the production quality or the actors or the characters. I imagine a lot of them. Imagine they tried their best. They did the best with what they had, and it shows. And I'm not going to ever try to take that away from them. I am merely just saying that me personally, I couldn't pay attention to it. And that just might be a me thing, because if you watch this and you could pay attention to it, and you could follow it from start to finish, and you may even really love it. If that's the case, good for you. I'd suggest it to you. I wouldn't suggest it to me, though. Be imaginative, everybody.